have no formulaic way to sell. I have no idea what I'm doing. Kicked out of the house, super embarrassing. And that day I decided, I'm like, I need to learn how to sell and communicate effectively through a system. And that's the day I started to become good at sales.
I look at guys like you and it's like, all right, you're younger than me and you're the OG. And so like you have 10 years doing this.
So that's the biggest takeaway that I got when I was younger. It was like, if you want to have success in this business, you need to be making offers on a daily basis. That's the only way you're going to have success. You go on Google and you start calling the quote unquote competitors. It's like a bunch of Neanderthals answer the phone. You're like, and then they don't even call you back right away. And it's like, if you're just that much better than the next person, you don't have to worry about competition.
It's something that one of my mentors, Kent Clothier, says, you can count on the mediocrity of your competition.
Oh, especially in this industry.
Especially in the REI space. All right, guys, welcome to the Leads to Deals podcast, where we talk about everything from leads to deals and everything we talk about leads to deals. So who's this podcast for? It's for you, my listeners, that are looking to better their lives, better their financial situation, and master the art of communication through sales and entrepreneurship to become a multimillionaire many, many times over. One of the ways that you can express gratitude and show us that you got value from today's podcast or YouTube is to click the subscribe button, like, comment, share. We really appreciate it. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by the best data company out there for all things real estate. Whether you're an investor, a wholesaler, a mortgage refinance company, or even like solar sales, I want you to go visit synergydata.io. Currently, they're running a promotion where it's $199 a month and you get 10,000 free records, highly motivated sellers. You can do everything from pulling credit scores, motivation flags, etc. on your sellers to ensure that you're calling the people who want to sell their house today. And today's guest, he's a real estate rock star. We were just talking about off camera. He's been doing this pretty much his entire adult life, which is almost going on in a decade now that he's been really honed in on this part of his entrepreneurial career, from flipping houses, wholesaling, managing rentals from one coast to the other. It's something I'm really excited to talk about here. And we both have a passion for sales, how to negotiate deals, handle tough sellers. So with that being said, I wanted to welcome warmly to our podcast here at Leads to Deals, Greg Helbeck. Greg, thanks for coming on and chatting with me, brother.
Scott, I've been looking forward to this. This is going to be a fun time.
Yeah, I appreciate it too, man. And it's like they have this phrase that I heard a long time ago. It's called like the young OGs. And so I look at guys like you and it's like, all right, you're younger than me and you're the OG. And so like you have 10 years doing this, and you were saying that you went to college and then went directly from college into the REI space. Is that kind of the...
Yeah, I started it in college. So I was going to community college back in New York, where I grew up, the New York City area. And I went to a seminar and they were talking about double closing houses and doing assignments. And I was like, what the hell? And they talked about escrow. And I'm like, what is this? And they were like, yeah, you can make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 checks doing this. And I was like, damn, that sounds like something I'm interested in. And then the thing that they don't say at the seminar is that if you want to get good at doing that, cash in $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 checks, you got to get really good at sales. And that's what they leave out. And I had to figure that one out the hard way.
So you're in community college. What year of community college were you when you were there?
I think it was the second year of community college. So it's a 2-year program. I ended up getting my 4-year degree, but it was basically halfway to college.
Yeah. So and after that seminar, you still stayed on your college journey. Is that correct?
I did. I graduated college as a full-time real estate investor.
Wow. What was your specialty in?
It was business admin.
Interesting. The most general one. Yeah. That's the one to make the parents proud. Yeah. I went to college. I got this piece of paper.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right.
I was watching something on X today, and they were talking about how like the last 10 years, the most chosen degree was like computer science or something very generalized. And because what people were doing is 7 years ago, they were Googling what's the highest paying degree, not necessarily a passion for it. But now what they were saying is that you can track now those salaries and how much they've dropped, as there's been so many people coming into the marketplace. But more importantly, in the past 12 months, the AI change that's happened. It's like now a lot of people out there can get into it and you don't have to have this extreme background. I was like, man, that really sucks for all these people with these big, huge debts right now. And essentially, they're no longer needed.
It's crazy. I use ChatGPT all the time. It's scary and also cool at the same time, because you can literally get stuff that would have had to do for 3 or 4 days, get it in a matter of minutes now. Like I generate images all the time. I'm like, make me an image of this for this, and it's like done. And I'm like, wow.
Well, how I use it in the REI space and even for sales scripts, I mean, I've used it to tweak so many things. Matter of fact, I'm flying to the United States here in the next few weeks, and I'm giving a presentation at a CG event on how we're using AI for quality assurance. So we have our own QA department, and now we're leveraging AI to help us audit it at scale because I can train our prompt to have all the specific coaching styles that I want to give feedback. And so we fed it some Zig Ziglar articles. We fed it some Jordan Belfort stuff. We've identified like 80 power phrases, 25 probing questions. They get additional scores when they do this or they go down from here. So it's really, really interesting to see how you can get uniformity and at scale what AI has allowed us to do.
It's crazy. It's absolutely, because that's the more data you give it, the smarter it gets. And then that's when you give it all the unique prompts, like that's when it just gets wild. And it's so efficient too for everyone.
I thought about this the other day, Greg. I said, man, I wonder how long it'll take, if it'll ever actually happen, where kind of the gurus go by the wayside. And the only reason why I say that is, I've always really struggled with like cap rates and DSCR loans and, all this other stuff. I just couldn't understand being able to depreciate and exactly the best strategies for that. And so literally once the advanced GPT AI voice came out, I literally was laying in bed like night after night, and I would just start having conversations with it, having it explain to me. I said, explain to me like a 5-year-old cost segregation. And it gave me the most beautiful analysis using Legos. And like I understood, but it didn't click. And then after it gave me that, then I said, I could explain it to me like I'm a university student. And then it took it to that next level. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, I literally went from being like, I'm unsure exactly how to best leverage and how to use it to now feeling like I'm a damn expert in it. So I guess I don't need to go pay that one guy that was going to teach me that guru thing.
Exactly. It's funny you say that because I had, we're doing a lot of asset protection stuff in my company now. And I had to switch some leases over because like I have a management company that owns that manages all my rentals that are owned in their own LLCs, all that kind of layered stuff. So I went on GPT and I said, draft me a management agreement between this entity and that entity with this language in there. 7 DocuSign them. It's just wild. And it's like legit information. Obviously, I know what to look for. It's just crazy. I got that done in 10 minutes.
It is crazy. My executive assistant, we're doing something, restructuring some stuff with an attorney here in Colombia, and they transcribed it all in English. And she sent it to me and she was like, hey, it's ready. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to drop it into GPT. And she's like, no, it's already been transcribed. I said, yeah, no, I got it. But I'm going to ask it, what is it missing to protect me? And I'm going to ask it to break this down. And I like understanding legalese and having somebody take the complex and make it more particularly my style is important. So yeah, that's where we're at today. I want to scroll back though. Like you talked about sales, and I watch a lot of your content. You have a great YouTube channel. You have some great YouTube shorts too. I really enjoy your shorts. That's a terrible thing to say. But anyway, so tell me, man, like your first kind of direct to seller, direct to customer. Did you have marbles in the mouth? Did you have any sales experience whatsoever? Like, how did it go?
I'll tell you a good story. So this is how I realized I needed to get good at sales. I went on an appointment with my mentor. This was like 2016, maybe 17, I forget, dating myself. And I got a lead from a bandit sign in, I think the lead was in Rockland County, which is like right near Manhattan. Like people there are smart, savvy. Guy was in foreclosure. And I told my mentor, and at this point I probably did like 2 wholesale deals, maybe 3. And I said, hey, got this good lead. You want to watch me close the guy, and then I'll lock it up and I'll assign it to you on the spot. And he's like, that sounds like a plan, buddy. So we drive out to this guy's house in his living room. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like the 2 or 3 deals I did were just by pure persistence. And the guy was like in his pajamas. It's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And he was like, not excited for me to be there. I had no process, no system, no way of like formulating the conversation. And I walk around his house. He's just like wants me to give him an offer. And I go to sit down to present, and I'm at his table and I sit, and he's like standing, like the seller's standing in his PJs, like with his arms crossed, looking down at me like I'm some idiot, which I was. And before I could even get the offer out, he goes, get the f out of my house. Get the f out of here. You're a clown. And I'm like, and I walked out of the house and I told the mentor, I'm like, hey, sorry, man, I'll get you on the next one. And I sat in my car. I kid you not. I'll never forget. This was like actually in the winter time too. It was probably like right around this time of the year, like December. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I got these couple deals because I was really, persistent. I have no formulaic way to sell. Like I had no idea what I'm doing. I got kicked out of the house, super embarrassing. And that day I decided, I'm like, I need to learn how to sell and communicate effectively through a system. And at that point, I became obsessed with like sales sales training, who's a good sales mentor, what books do I got to read? And that's the day I started to become good at sales, because I had to make a decision after that embarrassing moment, getting kicked out of someone's house, not knowing what I was doing. And that's when it all changed for me from a sales standpoint.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I tell you, one of my very first deals that I ever got in my very first sales career kind of changed my life for that same reason. It's because they called in this big sales floor. We had sold, this was timeshare, but I got my first deal ever. And they called us all up to the front of the room, all the people who got the deals the day before. And they were going like, okay, and tell us about your deal. And then, all right, Scott, you just got your first deal ever. And I'm super high. I'm like, yes, this is great. And they're like, tell us a little bit about the deal, how you got it. And I don't recall the exact verbiage, but I was so flippant, so nonchalant about it. Like, yeah, I just went out there, I did my thing and whatever. They fucking destroyed right then and there. They were like, this right here is exactly what failure looks like when you succeed. And I mean, they let me have it. He's like, he doesn't appreciate the process that he went through. He's not understanding the steps that we went through. He thinks it's all him. And it like really shook me, because I was like, oh shit, they're right. Like, I didn't appreciate that I did this and I overcame that objection and I did this. So I wasn't controlling the conversation. Had that customer not been in my favor, had they not had their best day, had they not already had some of their objections handled previously or been an easier sale, I never would have got it. And that really, really helped me out, because I had never yet in my life, it's like getting the first place award and then being told you're a loser.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, like I needed that. Yeah. So it really emotionally did it. And that set me on my journey to find my mentors. And I looked around and I didn't have too many on the sales side. So I came up with this other solution. But what about you when you were like, okay, I'm going to now learn communication or sales, so that way you don't get embarrassed like that again? Where did you turn?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was the first, layer was the books. So like the Sandler sales system, but there's a book called You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. So I read and listened to that thing like 5 times. And then Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, came out at that time. That book just started coming out and started getting popular. Consumed the hell out of that. And then I found a REI specific sales trainer who was it's like, there's the niche and then there's the niche of the niche. And that's what and I found someone named John Martinez. He actually sold his business to another guy named Jerry Green. So Jerry Green's the owner of it now. And I found this guy who was teaching real estate investing sales. Because like you can learn sales, and a lot of sales is like, the concepts will travel on. But this was like, how do you actually buy a house at a discount sales? So I'm like, wow, that's a niche of a niche. And at that time, I had a little bit of money saved. So I joined his program as a student. And I think it was like, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 or whatever. And I went ham on his content. Like I was on every single call. I was participating on the calls. I was asking him questions. He used to give out his freaking Voxer ID. So I'd hit him up with like questions. And I started to basically just take everything he was teaching and I started applying it directly in the New York area where I'm from. And I started to make more sales because I had a formulaic approach to it at that point. And, once that started happening, I started getting a lot more experience and I'd go on more appointments and I'd take his information. And then I started like recording my calls, breaking my own calls down. And then I used to put them on the internet for everyone to listen to. And then that got me some attention. Yeah. And then, no one was doing that back then. And then, all of a sudden I became like aligned with John and I would help him out in his sales training stuff, and that's how I actually got like well known in the industry, is like actually through John, from like being like his like number one sales student back like 7 years ago.
Did you, when you first started that, like when you very first bought the course, joined it and started diving into it, did you consider yourself an REI, or were you still floating around like, damn, I need to pay bills and I'm trying to do this and this? Or were you kind of like all in?
It was all real estate. I mean, before I started making like wholesale deals happen, I would go to garage sales and I'd buy shit and sell it, like air conditioning units, like just making a couple $100 here and there. But once I started doing some deals, I mean, I was still living with my parents. I didn't have much overhead.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, what did the parents think? Like, hey, college, by the way, I just bought some random guy's course and now I'm going to go be a salesperson.
It's funny you say that, because when I first started, they thought I was crazy. They're not entrepreneurs. And then I came back 9 months later with a check for $5,000 because they saw me working for free, or actually paying because I was buying bandit signs and whatnot, handwriting mailers. And then I came back with a $5,000 check and they're like, okay, like seems like this might work. And then I came back like a month later with a $10,000 check and they're like, okay, now he basically doubled what he made on the first one. And then I came back like a month after that with a $15,000 check and they're like, okay, seems like real estate thing is starting to slowly work. And then fast forward a couple years later, I'm getting my car shipped out to San Diego, California, getting my new apartment out there. And they're like, okay, I think he's going to do real estate. So in the beginning, they were a little skeptical because they're not entrepreneurs. But then once they started seeing some checks come in, they realized that, this was actually a serious serious thing.
The guy who got me into the REI space, his name's Alex Cazada out of Orlando. I watched him literally from a very, very similar thing. Like he started just raw dog, pure bandit signs. And there's something so humbling. So I love this guy. So I never looked down upon it, but I appreciated how preposterous it was that you're going to sneak out in the middle of the night, especially all night hanging out, partying downtown, whatever it may be. And you're going to drive around and put these signs up in the hood, dark as shit outside. And then, I think about your situation, your parents, you're like, you're doing what? Why does your room smell like markers? Like this marker smell is all over, and you're going to go put signs up? Like, come on, this is beneath you type thing. And so it's cool that they support it or at least let you go through to it, because to be a parent and be like, what? Especially if you don't have you're putting signs, you're dirty in the neighborhood, honey.
You're loitering in the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
They used to have Facebook groups about me because I was like the king of signs in the Hudson Valley. And there was like little community Facebook groups. And they'd be like, because I wouldn't put my name on the sign. I put like another, like, I think it was Alex. It was Alex Buys Houses. It was a yellow sign. And they're like, who's this Alex guy? And like my grandparents are in this Facebook group. And like, who's this guy loitering Rockland County and this, that, and the other? And those freaking signs got me started. And they worked. And I if someone's brand new getting started, you put out signs and get leads, because the whole point of this podcast is leads to deals. You put out signs consistently because of a budget issue, you will get deals from that if you're consistent and persistent with it, because it's all about just the lead gen and the offers.
And it's also one of those things too that a lot of people have great ideas and they don't necessarily follow through on them. And so what's interesting is you can be out there and you can place your sign beside 7 other signs, and it's amazing how many guys don't actually respond to their Google Voice numbers. And so I can't tell you how many times when I'll drive through a community in the States, I just want to hear the pitch. I want to see what's going on. And I call the number and nobody actually ever calls back, ever. So once you generate the leads, let's also begin to work the leads. And it's something that one of my mentors, Kent Clothier, says, you can count on the mediocrity of your competition.
Oh, especially in this industry.
Especially in the REI
it's like
space.
The dipshit land. If you go on Google, I think you actually did this when you started. You go on Google and you start calling the quote unquote competitors. It's like a bunch of Neanderthals answer the phone. Like you're like, and then they don't even call you back right away. And it's like, if you're just that much better than the next person, you don't have to worry about competition, because especially if they're not highly trained in sales and they don't call you back right away, like you got nothing to worry about. And I know how Kent says that. It's so true.
Yeah, I think too, what's even more shocking or continuing in that is how many people are paying for ads, and that's what you fill out. And then those people don't call you back. So that's preposterous, because that just costs $200 and you're not going to call them back right away. So anyway, so you found the Martinez, you went into the training of that, right? Like you're dialed in. I see today's day. Now, this was 10 years ago, so there was still a lot of information. But one of the things I feel so blessed is I was probably a decade or so before you, is I didn't have all these online distractions. Like if I wanted to educate myself, there really wasn't YouTube to that degree. It was just books. And so like I felt so blessed now looking back, that because I'm an obsessive OCD type person, man. Like if I had education, my education source was here, I'd also be on Instagram and I'd also be here. It's just so hard. This is like a drug and it's pulling you every which direction. So was there a lot of other people providing information, or back then was it more just 1 or 2 guys? And if there was a lot, like how did you just stay focused on this one methodology, at least to master it and make it your own?
That's a great question. So it wasn't as crazy as it was now with the TikTok and the Reels and stuff, but there was still a decent amount of podcasts and there were some YouTube channels out there. At least in the beginning for me, my main thing was I wanted to make money wholesaling because I didn't have a lot of capital back then. So I would really get specific on real estate wholesaling podcasts, and I would listen to individual podcast episodes that had to do with wholesaling, which was like, marketing, getting leads, and then talking to sellers, which is what I started to figure out, with the training. And then how do you sell to buyers? So like there's guys like Todd Toback and Joe McCall and Sean Terry. It's funny, like I know all them now, but I would listen to Matt Terrio, another guy, Epic Real Estate. He's like the OG. And I would just listen to like their podcasts, and a lot of just specific episodes on their podcast that had to do with wholesaling is what really got me focused. So I didn't get like the shiny object syndrome, like, oh, I got to buy deals creative finance, or I got to do wraparound mortgages or whatever. I just stuck to my lane. And that's something I've been pretty good at through my career, is just like focusing like 1 or 2 things, getting really good at them. And then at that point, if I wanted to do something else, building kind of on that base.
When you look back at that original foundational training, is there some highlights that you can take away to share that are like, like these were fundamentals? And I'm sure they, across multiple products, not only just REI, but what are some of your core fundamental takeaways that you got from that for people out there who maybe don't have sales training?
100%. I would say from like getting started and focusing on like the right stuff that actually works. If you're not successful at least in the real estate industry, or I would say in the sales industry as well, it's you're not making enough offers or presentations. You're not speaking to enough people. So I see a lot of new people, and that's something that I took seriously right off the bat is like, if you're not where you're at, or if you're not where you want to be at, you need to be making more offers, like to be real estate specific. So I remember like I had a little scorecard I made, and I was like, how many offers did I make that day? And our company still does that to this day, obviously at a higher scale. But a lot of newbies or new salespeople, they are doing all of the activities that aren't actually driving revenue. Like they're polishing up their CRM, or they're tying their shoes, or they're not on the phone with sellers making offers. They're not on the phone with potential clients making presentations, and they're not tracking that. So they're not seeing the success because they're not actually doing the hard work that's necessary to get the results that they want. So like, let's say I have a conversation with a newbie. They're like, oh, I haven't done any deals yet. And the first thing I'll ask them is, hey, how many offers did you make last month? And usually the answer is none, I don't know, or I don't have enough information to make offers. And they're just completely beating around the bush. So that's the biggest takeaway that I got when I was younger, was like, if you want to have success in this business, you need to be making offers on a daily basis. That's the only way you're going to have success. And then if you want to like kind of pre-verse that, how do you make an offer? You have to get a lead, right? And if you don't have any leads, it's going to be hard to make an offer on.
And isn't it so funny too, for anybody who's new or thinking about the REI space and you're watching this, it's like what he just said is the most basic, simple thing. In other words, like it couldn't get any easier. It is just making the offers. He didn't say to make a well-polished presentation. He didn't say to make sure you have it's literally just, it's in the beginning, it's just go, just do the thing, just make those numbers. Because ultimately, if you're good, maybe you're 1 out of 6. If you're crappy, maybe you're 1 out of 50. But let's just get some revenue going. And if you're 1 out of 50 bad, then okay, but let's put in 49 no's to get to that one yes. And I agree with you, too many people, they can't handle, either so afraid of the rejection that only exists in their head, or they can't handle the little bit of uphill walking that it's going to take to be able to get to it. And I always say this, that people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. And so for me, I agree wholeheartedly. There's no professional out there. There's no MLB baseball player. There's no NFL player that doesn't know their stats. And so if you want to be a pro at something, how do you not even keep track of your own stats?
It's so important, especially in the beginning, because if you can build up that habit base of making and tracking your offers, like even like our company's a lot bigger now than it was when I started. To this day, my acquisitions guy, Brett, he's like also basically my partner now. Like anything that the seller says, like, oh, well, you said that you did this. He goes back, everything is paper trailed, tracked, and every offer's there. So we had a house in Seattle that we're trying to buy now. And she was saying that we offered her way more money. And then he goes back into the database, pulls up the offer that he made that's tracked and presents it to her. And now she's going to take it. And it's like everything too is tracked as well, like our offers. So like, and if you're brand new, like obviously that's a different story. But if you just track the offers, you can see the data. And then like you said, if you make 50 offers, you get 1 conversion, that's better than nothing. And then at that point, your goal is to, how do I get my conversion rate to be better? Okay, well, how do I get to 1 out of 25? Do I target better leads? Do I get better at sales? But if you have no data to go off of, it's just like kind of like a boat going around with no rudder.
Let's talk about the sales process. I know it may have changed a little bit as the market shifted and also as you geographically may be shifting. Originally, if I'm correct, you were in California doing New York deals. Now you're in California, you're doing Seattle deals?
So I live in Washington. Our business is still basically headquartered in New York. So I run the business somewhat virtually. I go back there a decent amount, but our core market is still the New York suburbs. I do some local deals here now that I've been here for 6 months, but our main area is that tough New York City market where like the Northeast, we got these tough sellers. So we're very familiar with, dealing with those types of things.
And are you guys doing acquisitions more virtually, meaning obviously just over the phones, or are you guys sending runners to do?
We're doing the negotiations over the phone, but we will send people out to confirm the property is not a complete dump before, we flip a lot of houses now. So like we're doing the sales is over the phone, but then we'll send someone out after the fact to confirm, the condition or whatever. But the actual sales process is done over the telephone.
Yeah, I get a lot of people who ask, they're like, hey, Scott, what's your advice for somebody starting out, or somebody will corner me somewhere and say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about getting it, but I don't know which market to choose. And my almost knee-jerk reaction all the time, aside from some other advice about maybe just going and working for somebody first to master it, I think that's probably my North Star.
piece of advice, by the way.
Yeah. But to stay in your backyard, just because there's some familiarity and comfortability and believability and credibility that you get while you're there. So I know you started there. Can you walk through, did you used to be face-to-face exclusively and then you went, and how was the shift to going virtual? What kind of struggles you've had with virtual offering, if anything? And have you thought about flipping it back to face-to-face as the market shifted?
Yeah, that's a great question. So started out face-to-face. I was living there, I was in college, so it made sense going on appointments, whatever. And then when I moved to San Diego, obviously I couldn't do that anymore. I had to basically, get good at doing it over the phone. And I realized that when I was doing the face-to-face stuff, a lot of the deals that I did face-to-face, I had like this real, I'm like, I could have probably bought that over the phone. Because at that point I knew my numbers, I knew the ARVs, I knew repairs, I knew construction. And I was like, well, if I could make more offers over the phone, this is before I had an acquisitions guy, I could probably do more deals because I could just make more offers over the phone. I didn't have to drive out there. I didn't live there, so I couldn't do that. But I was like, we could probably do this process over the telephone and be a lot more efficient. And then maybe our conversion rate or maybe our discounts might go down or whatever. But if we make more offers over the phone, we can ultimately do more business and make more revenue. And a lot of the deals too that I realized, like the smoking hot spreads where you're going to make like six figures. If a house is vacant, the owner probably doesn't live there. They most likely don't live anywhere nearby. They live out of state. So it's like, if you have that kind of avatar, like probably, you're probably going to do it over the phone anyway. Like the deals we do when they're living in the house are usually the biggest pain in the ass because they have to move and this and that, whatever. So I realized that like a lot of our deals, like we could have just done virtually anyway. So I started to just make the offers over the phone, and it was the same conversation, except we just weren't looking at each other face to face. And I realized that if I have a good process, whether it's over the phone or in person, it doesn't really matter. And I ultimately knew I could make more offers if I'm on the phone virtually versus having to, San Diego, obviously I wasn't going to fly to New York every time there was.
Yeah, of course.
I just realized it was easy.
I did face-to-face sales, high-ticket face-to-face sales for over a decade before I even picked up a phone and started that. And in the beginning, I actually really struggled a lot with it, Greg, because I could be so much more aggressive with people face-to-face.
Yeah.
It's you can get away with a lot with a big smile on your face. You can say things. It's difficult to conclude instantly a sales presentation when you're in somebody's house or they're at your table. And I really did struggle, man. I was so aggressive in the beginning that I was bailing. I was failing so miserably. I was getting hung up on, clicked on. I was too aggressive. I was sounding like a jerk. It really took me a little minute to like pace myself to like, okay, actually that seller has a little bit more control here. They can just literally click a little button and like, bye-bye, Scott. So it took me a little bit to get used to it. But then what I started to observe in the REI space was that like I could get more deals at a velocity. Well, like the very first time I called somebody, they were like, well, actually somebody's coming out here tomorrow who sent me a piece of mail, and I would lock it up today. Like I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is a really big strategic advantage that I have here by doing it virtually. So can you articulate, maybe that's one of them, but some of the benefits, and then what's a negative to potentially now doing them virtually?
Yeah. So a negative to doing it virtually is you're going to have more issues with, the seller lying about the condition and maybe some deals canceling. Like if you haven't seen the house or whatever, they're telling you their word and you're taking their word for what it's worth. And then you lock it up on that basis. And then you send someone out there and they didn't tell you about the roof. They didn't tell you that the foundation's crumbling or whatever. That could lead to more cancellations, because if you were at the house and you saw it, you obviously know exactly what's going on. So that's the number one drawback. The second drawback is there are some sellers, and I'll just be honest about this. They're selling a house. It's most likely their largest investment or asset they have. Some people are going to want to meet someone in person, and that is the truth. There are people that are going to want to do business with local people. Thankfully, in our business, I do have people that can run appointments for me in that market and kind of like do a little quasi acquisitions role. My acquisitions guy does live in Delaware, so he buys them over the telephone, but we can pivot to when the seller needs to meet with somebody. We can kind of set up like a de facto appointment where like there's a closer there. So that's, something we've built over the years. Those are the really main two drawbacks is, not knowing the condition and going off of their word. And then sometimes that seller is going to want to deal with someone in person. You're going to want to see a local person, but we can, we've found ways to kind of handle that objection. The benefit that you said, this is something that people didn't, I remember this first time happened to me. I was like, holy shit. Lead came in. I was still living in California. This was probably 2021, 22. Called in. It was like a Friday evening and I was on the West Coast and this was an East Coast lead. So my guys were done for the day. I took the call myself and she's like, I need to sell my grandma's house. It was in a really good area. I got someone coming tomorrow to look at it and I'm in California and I'm obviously not flying out there to go on an appointment. And the first thing in my head, like my mind was like, fuck, what do I do? Like, how do I win this deal? Like, I can't like go on this appointment, whatever. And I said to her, I said, listen, I know you have this appointment tomorrow, but is there a number that you'd be happy with that we could agree to on the phone today to get you to cancel that appointment? And she, we went back and forth a little bit. She said, well, if you could do this number, I would just sell you the house right now. I don't have to deal with it. Got the deal on the spot, canceled the appointment, $40,000 on that deal. And I was like, holy shit, I just beat out this local competitor from California on the phone because I asked her the right questions.
You love that. It makes you feel like a king.
Yeah. And like, it was a good price, And the thing is like, you got to know your market. Like if this was like in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, I'd be a little slower to do that. But like I knew the zip code, knew the area, we got that like local presence, I guess. And I knew what the houses are worth. And like, so like that local knowledge gives me a big advantage to be like quote unquote virtual.
Yeah. I'm gonna give some advice here in a second, but I want to tell you something I've observed at scale to get your feedback on it. I tell people and I mean this because I represent a lot of players with our call center side. The people who have the shortest conversion from lead to contract are the virtual guys. The guys that I see get the biggest spreads are the face-to-face guys. And so what I tell people is like, I just watched this and it's anecdotal, right? It's not necessarily definitive, but faster money virtual, bigger and less is the face-to-face guys. And I think it's because of what you kind of alluded to. These other guys, they're having to cancel more and they're not able to do the best spreads. And some of the face-to-face guys, they're able to get that discount that you got to get on a virtual. They're able to get that up front and it's a better position deal. And so I always weigh back and forth. People are like, hey man, should I go virtual or face-to-face? It's like, it really just depends on where you're geographically located, et cetera. But those are what I observe. It's speed or size.
100%. And another thing too with that, I would say is if like we're kind of like a little unique is like we do a lot of flips and rehabs and wholetailing. So we might have to lock it up at a little bit of a higher price virtually, but we're still able to monetize it with a bigger margin on the back end because we're taking that product to retail. So I think if you're a virtual wholesaler, yeah, you're going to see, your assignments might be a little skinnier, but if you can find a way, especially now with the market pivoting, to take these properties down and maximize the value, you can get the best of both worlds sometimes.
I've watched so many wholesalers come in, go because they don't actually take down properties.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how they can.
It's mind blowing.
Crazy. It's absolutely crazy. When I learned that, Scott, my wealth got exponentially higher because I was doing the same thing, buying the house at the same price, but instead of settling for a $20,000 assignment fee, I was making $60, $70, $80, $90,000 on the same price just by having a different strategy. And that's when you can really juice up your net profits because you're already getting I say this to my coaching students too. I'm like, you're wholesaling the house. You already got the thing at this price. The house is worth that on the retail market. You got to find a way to close on this thing, take it down, clean it out, and double, triple your profit on the same lead, same price.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Let's talk about building credibility though. So, doing it where you're not going to the house. What are some of the things that you could offer as advice? Like, hey, if you're going to be virtual and you're not going to be able to go there and shake their hand and you're not going to go, as they say, belly to belly, what are some of the things that they can do to increase credibility or, get the customer's concerns without not shaking their hand? What is it that they can do?
You got to sound very certain on the phone, right? The number one thing I'll tell people is if you don't sound certain and you're not convincing on the phone and the seller feels like that you might not know what you're talking about, they're going to ghost you. But if you're very convincing and you're very, certain about what you can do to help them, whether it's on the phone or in person, doesn't really matter. It's like a subconscious pickup. Like they know you're the expert. You sound certain. You know what you're talking about. You sound like you've been doing this for a while. You do a good job listening to these people. That's another thing I see with sales. People do too much talking. They don't do enough listening. They don't ask the open-ended questions to get the sellers to actually expand. And then when they expand on what they say, the salespeople don't confirm what they said. So you're mutually on the same page. And then they don't go deeper. Like, oh, this house has been bothering me. How long has it been bothering you for? Oh, it's been bothering me for 5 years. Well, what's been going on over the last 5 years that's caused it? So you see what I'm doing? You're just asking these open-ended questions. You're getting the seller to then tell you more. You're confirming what they're telling you. So they're like, oh, this person's actually listening to me, which builds certainty, gets them to like you subconsciously. And then at that point, when you're listening to them, they know that you understand where they're coming from and you can sound certain about how you can actually help them. We've bought hundreds of houses in this area. We know what we're doing. This is how we can help you. It sounds like this is really what you need. That's how you really get someone over the phone to really know, like, and trust you. And you never have to meet these people because you're taking that time up front to listen. And then when you actually go into like present to them what you can do to help them, it's like you're hitting the nail right on the head because you spent all that time listening to them versus being like, we have 5 offers for you. And you just bam, 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 bam. Like that's what kills a lot of people is they just sound like they're too salesy and they're not listening to that customer.
I'm old enough, Greg, now that if I go to a doctor will come in and he's younger than me, right? And the very first time that happened, I was just like, what is this? And I almost consider that the same as like a virtual buyer versus the in-person. Like if the doctor's older, that's like the face-to-face guy. You immediately get a certain level of respect. It's like, okay, boom. Now the doctor comes in younger, what they open their mouth and say is going to make or break it right then and there. And if they do sound like a professional and they do sound like an expert in this local area, I'm like, sweet, great. This guy, he's going to be around forever. He's going to be able to help me. He's on the cutting edge of this, this, and this, and this. And so there is a value in it. One of the pieces of advice I would tell people is understand your sellers are no different than you, and they are going to go to Google. And so your website presence is your wingman when you're on the phone with these sellers. And so even if you're in San Diego or Washington State, your website better have some collateral, some photos, some background on the deals that you're doing in this market. If you don't do that, you are missing an opportunity to build credibility behind the curtains, as well as if you have the potentiality to get the BBB accreditation in that market, particularly for the older people. These are two like little small things that you can do to be a to be a local professional, even if you're in South America.
100%. And I tell a lot of people too, like, I do a lot of mailing for leads. We put our website on the postcard, we put our email on there, like put everything on there because a lot of people are going to look you up. And if your website is good and it's congruent with what you're saying, then like you said, the website, it's like your de facto sales partner. Because if I'm buying something like, as a B2B sale, B2C sale, I'm on the website, I'm looking and seeing who am I dealing with? What's going on? What's their credibility like? Like, what is their page? What does their pages look like? Are their pages a website from 1990? Or is it a modern website that has like some robust features on there? So people are a lot more, savvy nowadays, especially if you're doing like digital ads. Obviously, that's a given. But I think the biggest takeaway if you want to do it virtually is number one, you have to be really good at listening and asking the questions and getting that seller to really open up to you. And then another thing I tell my team a lot is when they say something after you ask an open-ended question, you got to understand how to confirm and summarize that in your own words so that they understand that you know what they're going through. That's how you build rapport. It's not talking about the New York Jets who are horrendous, talking about their situation and then summarizing what they told you so they know you actually care about them.
I love that. Let's talk about contracts. So a lot of newbies and a lot of virtual people, I think that when you're face-to-face with somebody and you have a clipboard and you have a purchase agreement and you're able to lock them up, it feels a little bit more natural. When I got into this industry, I couldn't believe how many people emailed contracts, sent out a DocuSign and was like, well, you review it with your wife and then, if you can, return it or whatever. And so what I saw when I first came to this industry is like people would talk about projected profit, which is its own rabbit hole we could go down. But they'd be like, I sent out 3 contracts today, or I got 3 contracts today. I'm like, I thought you said nobody signed. Well, no, I sent them out. They're going to be deals. And I'm like, okay, let's wrap our head around this, boys and girls. We don't even have a deal until the titling office says we have a deal. But anyways, aside from that, what advice do you give your community or anybody who's following out there to make sure they're not just sending out blind offers and they're actually getting contracts signed at that day when they're doing it virtually?
I could talk about this for 4 hours. I love how you brought that up. So the first thing is before you even get into the contracts, you have to ask the seller, what are a lot of, this doesn't even apply for new, this is like advanced people too. They do this like false sense of security where they send stuff out. Like something I'll do, because I still deal with sellers once in a while, is I'll say, if everything worked out for you, you were happy with an offer, you were happy with the price, everything made sense for you, what would your next steps be if you were cool with everything? And if they don't give me like information on that they're actually interested in moving forward, there's still an objection we have to handle. Because if I send them a contract at that point, they're not going to sign it, they're going to ghost. So assuming they say, if everything made sense and I was happy and comfortable with everything, I would be interested in moving forward, I would then say, okay, so it sounds like if everything worked out, we could get some paperwork going and we could potentially get an agreement completed if everything made sense for you, right? And I'm like seeding this idea of a contract. And then if they give me more language, yes, I'd be open to moving forward, blah, blah, whatever they want to say. Now I know if we actually get closer to the close and we do present a contract to them, there's a pretty good chance they're going to sign that on the spot. So what we normally do, they give us the information that we need that sounds like they're going to move forward, we'll inch closer to that. Now, if they're not giving us that information that we need to make us seem like they're interested in moving forward, we're going to figure out and find out what are the other objections. Sounds like even if you got an offer you like today, seems like you probably wouldn't be open to moving forward, or it sounds like you're not comfortable with something. We're trying to like label their emotions and see what's going on. And then usually what happens is like, oh, well, I got to talk to my brother. Okay, so it sounds like no matter what's happening, your brother's involved in this. You see, I'm just trying to isolate these objections. Now, let's say they're ready to move forward and there is a contract that we're going to put out. We do not send contracts. We tell them about the offer. We go through the details. And then once they're ready to move forward and they agree verbally, okay, I will move forward with you, assuming that the number is 350 and the earnest deposit is 5,000 and the close of escrow is, whatever, 12, 20, 2024. At that point, we summarize that. And when we put the contract together, we go, it's almost like, that game Battleships where your computers are back. We then give them the offer through DocuSign. We're on the computer with them reading through this simple agreement that we have. If it's in New York, there's a lawyer, so it's a little different. But, if it's an out-of-state deal, like a Washington deal, going through the agreement, it's very simple. And then at that point, we're just having them initial it. Hey, this is the price. This is that. Just basically hit next, sign, finish. At that point, you'll get a copy back. And then at that point, you sign the contract with them, complying and not giving any objections. When you send people actual contracts, say, review this and get back to me, that's when they ghost you. And no plan, because you most likely didn't ask the questions. I call them commitment questions that actually get them to tell you if they're serious about moving forward. Because you could tell somebody, like, what does Chris Voss say? Yes is nothing without how. They could say yes to your offer, but if there's no how-to plan on how to move that offer to a contract, it's a false sense of security.
Yeah, I think it's so amazing because we come from different worlds, but we're all saying the same things. And these trial closes that you're talking about, like you're bringing up that subject and you're getting those responses. A lot of times people I observe in this industry, they are sending out agreements almost as a way to get relief for themselves. Like they're scared to get that no. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it out and hope that I get that yes. And you really, what I tell people, I tell my agents all the time is that when you go onto a phone call, I want you to pretend like you're wearing one of those rain parkas, like this rain jacket, right? You're covered. And then you want the customer to throw up on you. You got to get that no out of them as many times as possible before you get that final yes. Because if not, they're going to save that no till the very end. And so when somebody throws up on you, you're wearing a rain jacket, baby. It doesn't matter. I can't sell my house. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, let them get it out of their system, buddy. Nobody woke up today and said, I'm going to make the second biggest financial decision of my entire life on a random Thursday, and I'm going to do this. So it's like, get that no out of them. And then the other part that you said, I'll tell you how we do it on ours, is we let them know that once we're finally there and we have that agreement and we're going to send you a simple 3-page documents written in first grade English. But the software that we use, it's a secured document system. And so what it does is it'll pull up on my screen equally while it's pulled up on yours. And so we just let them understand that, like, hey, listen, we don't send them out. It's only going to be there when it's on my screen and it's on your screen at the same time. So we can do what you just said, which is just walk them through the process, because I don't want them to have a question when I'm not there.
Exactly.
I want to be able to be there to answer that question then and there.
Exactly. And that's something I see people make the mistake, is their 3-page agreement might be very simple. If you just send somebody an e-sign form and there's one thing in there that they don't understand, like title being cleared, required documents for like some basic contract law, and they don't know what it is, like a confused mind says no. And then I don't know what this is. I thought I was getting 350 grand and this doesn't make any sense. But if you're on the phone with them and you're going through that agreement with them, hey, what does this mean, ID required? Hey, John, that's a great question. We get that a lot. That just means before the closing, you have to send the title company a photo picture of your ID so they can verify that you are who you say you are. Oh, that makes sense.
Millions of dollars in profit will be lost today from people who send out DocuSign agreements who aren't on the phone, because of that first screen that pops up that says, by clicking this box, you agree to digital signatures. You can't even imagine, REI guys, how many people never even see your damn document that you send out because of that first screen that says, by clicking this box, you agree to DocuSign's terms. It's like, you're not even giving yourself a shot because you're hoping for a deal versus walking. A well-executed sales presentation, the logical conclusion to a well-executed sales presentation is the signature of the agreement or the purchase of the product or whatever it may be. And so to all of a sudden be like, I'm going to make it all the way to third base and halfway to home, I'm just going to turn around now and no longer pay attention, would be preposterous. And that's what a lot of people do. So I'm glad to see that in your community and groups and followings, like you're going over these things, because sometimes it's something as small as that, where it's like, dude, I keep on having these great presentations and just people aren't turning turn it in the contract. It's like,
yeah, it's because they're not asking those tough questions too. They're not getting to the meat before they actually put up an agreement. Because, another question I like asking is like, hey, assuming you're happy with everything and you were comfortable, you got to make it about them. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to move forward? Like that's a no oriented question, because you want them. No, because like if someone said, like, it's almost like people don't want to go back on their word. If someone says, Greg, I'm comfortable selling you the house if everything makes sense, they verbally told you they're probably going to sell you the house. Everything makes sense, which is the problem to solve. They're a lot more likely to actually follow through on what they already said, right? But if they say, oh, I can't move forward right now because of X, Y, Z, well, now you know. It's a follow-up. There's an objection you didn't handle. But it's like, it's always like, it's like a conveyor belt, right? And it's like, there's always like the same thing. It's like Groundhog's Day. This is an objection. They got to get their brother involved. Okay, well, next step isn't signing a contract. Getting the brother on the phone. Maybe the brother's deal killer. Maybe the brother's a real estate agent. Like, there's so many things, but it's always like the same sequence.
Yeah, I see a lot of kids here, and I'm trying to teach them about our closing sales process and how it all works. And it's like, you just got to put yourself in the shoes of the seller for a few minutes. And if you did that, you'd understand, like, they just really want to know, are you a legitimate company? Are you going to scam? Is there somehow I'm going to sign a document and not get any money from my house? Like, is this a possibility? And so that's why having some of this online credibility, et cetera, and incredible conversations really matters. I want to talk about comping with you real quick. I know that obviously New York was your background, where you started, but I know you started to kind of poke around onto the West Coast and maybe even some other places. But when you're doing virtual and you're going into a new market, what are some of the places, resources, et cetera, people should be using? Because I think comping personally is one of the more tougher things, is to make sure I'm delivering the right offer where both me and the seller can win.
That's a great question. So I like redfin.com. I mean, I have MLS, in the areas, so it helps me. But I mean, Redfin is very similar. There's just no agent only remarks in there. So I like Redfin. And like, if I'm comping a house, I need to go apples to apples comp. So let's say you have a 3-bed, 2-bath ranch, right? That's the subject property. When I'm comping that property on Redfin, I need to look for only, if they're there, 3-bed, 2-bath ranches. And then I look at and I like to look at pendings. This is something that people don't put enough emphasis on. I want to see, where is the market going? What is the current trends? I look at pending first. And I was like, okay, let's say their pending houses for 500,000. And I can see on pending, you can see all the pictures because it's like a listing or whatever. So now I'm looking through those pictures. I'm like, okay, so it seems like that house is a little dated. It seems like it's selling for 500. Sellers tell me her house is pretty dated. So I'd assume that her house as is probably worth 500 based on these pending comps. And then I look to see how long did it take to go pending, right? If it took 2 weeks to go pending, that means the market moves quickly. But let's say it was on the market for 90 days and then it finally went pending last week. That means that, that property at that price is going to be sitting until it goes pending. And then obviously the last thing you want, or two things. The second to last thing is the solds, which is the confirmed sales data. Some markets you can see the pictures after they're sold. Other markets you can't. Like in New York, you can't see that. So I need to use the MLS. But that obviously tells you like 3-bed, 2-bath ranch in that condition, sold for that price, days on market. That's a big deal. And then the last thing, because we do a lot of flips, is the pendings is what I start with. And then I go back and look at the actives. Who would I be competing with that's active? So if I go buy this house in this condition and I go put it on the market, whether I renovate it or not, this is who I'm competing with. So what I like to do, I'll give you an example. There's a house that we're going to put on the market in January because of the holidays. That product at $399 will fly off the shelf because all the other active properties around there that are in the same condition, maybe nicer, are trying to sell for $400, $450. So I know if I put my product that's just as nice as that one at $399 and I'm competing with guys at $425 or $450, that buyer is going to want to go to my property because it's priced cheaper and it's in the same condition. So this is, and if you're wholesaling too, it's the same thing. Like you're selling your deal to a cash buyer. Cash buyer is going to do the same thing that I'm doing. I'm looking at the pendings, looking at the actives. I'm looking at the sold. And a lot of wholesalers, I know I'm kind of rambling here, they have no idea how a flipper makes money. They just say, oh, it's worth 400. I can wholesale it for, 370 or 350. The buyer can make, it's like, no, like there's soft costs. You have to model match the comps. So if you're a wholesaler, like I love buying deals from wholesalers. That's how we get like a third of our deals. Like if the wholesaler comes to me and they have reasonable numbers and they know their stuff, I'm instantly going to want to spend more time on that lead because the things that they're saying are somewhat accurate, and I can get them an offer a lot quicker versus some guy who has a wholesale that he puts out for $450 when the ARV is $500 and needs $50,000. I'm like, how could I not lose $50,000 on this deal? And the wholesalers who don't know what they're doing, like they don't know. They have no idea what they're doing, and it drops a lot of their credibility down because they don't know how to comp.
I see what you're doing. It's a really big specialty. A lot of wholesalers never progress out of wholesaling, so that means that you're doing. Are you doing full like guts? Or are you doing mainly light?
I like to do like the 40 to 50K rehabs. rehabs, upgrade the kitchen, upgrade the bathrooms, upgrade the floors, do like a little bit of electric. I will do guts. I don't like to do them because they take a lot of time and you have to get permits and you got to do a lot of like stripping a house out and rebuilding it. So I do like 2 or 3 guts a year, but most of our stuff is like I call them Cosmo rehabs: kitchen, bathrooms, floors, recessed lighting, paint. And that's really what we see makes the most sense for us.
What's the most you've ever lost on a property?
$20,000. Yeah. I bought it off the MLS. The agent who brought me the deal was lying about something that I didn't confirm, so it's my fault. Sewer was shot, so I paid too much off the MLS. Agent misrepresented the sewer condition. The rehab cost like $10,000 more than we thought because it was in a foreign territory. This was like outside of Delaware in Pennsylvania near Philly. And then the house didn't sell for the projected sales price that I thought was accurate. Ended up selling for $20K less. So I lost about 20 grand on that.
I ask that question a lot. It's not too bad, baby.
Yeah, I could be worse. Yeah.
It's an education tax. That's what I tell people all the time. You're going to pay education tax when you come into that, whether it's through a guru or marketing channels or whatever, it's going to happen. One or two last little questions for you, Greg. You sounds like you've stayed in the single family space, which I'm primarily in as well too. But then you see it's like, okay, so do I do less deals, bigger asset classes and bigger spreads, or do I stay here in this niche that I've gotten really well oiled out? What are kind of your thoughts on that? Like, why single family versus multifamily apartments? Whatever.
Yeah,
maybe.
That's a good question. I did one mixed use, like quasi apartment deal by myself. I actually lost money on that deal too, but not 20 grand. I lost like 10 on that. Didn't know what I was doing, right? Just kind of got into a deal and got over my skis and only lost 10. I mean, it sounds only lost 10 grand, which isn't bad, but it was just a giant waste of time. I am a big believer, at least my personality. I like going deep and becoming a master of something. Could I go into multifamily? Sure. But that is a different business. It requires different skill sets. There's a lot more sophistication. I think there's probably less motivated sellers in multi. So you have to be very good at operating assets and understanding how do you improve the NOI and all that stuff. I've just always liked single family because I've been doing it for 10 years. I've gotten fairly good at it. They're very liquid. You can sell them, you can rent them, you can owner finance them, you can do all these different things. Multifamily is interesting for me from a tax standpoint. And I have like all my rentals are like single family rentals. I don't have any like apartments or anything like that. It's interesting from a tax standpoint. It's interesting from like, I guess, a syndication standpoint. You can bring a lot of money together and do those deals. But for me, at this point, I just want to keep getting better at the single family business, whether that's flips or rentals. And, eventually maybe I want to change my mind and buy a bigger deal. But I think that the more deep you can go and the more you become a master, it's going to make you that much more wealthier, which then in turn would make you have a bigger advantage if you wanted to pivot because you have a lot of cash and wealth from that one strategy.
Yeah, I see the same things as you, man. Like, it's for me, I'm, newer. I'm in the space 4 or 5 years and I spent the predominant amount of my time on the agency side. So I get to watch people in different asset classes, et cetera. But what you said about the motivation is true. It's an absolutely different lead. But what's surprising, and again, this is something I don't have too much experience with, but I watch people be super successful with our leads, but is land. And so land is the same thing as multifamily, low motivation. But what's crazy is they release it like it's nothing. So like they don't have a motivation because it's not a lot of pain and it's not generating any revenue for them like you have this other side. And so it's just been a gnat in their ear. Not a big deal. Life is going to go on. They've had this parcel for 26 years. They thought they were going to retire. But I watch people really crush land. And I think what you said about being an expert in your asset class, because I don't know anything about getting land broken down in individual parcels and zoning and being able to either have my own development team or sell them. But I see a lot of kids really crushing land, particularly in the Florida region, right? I have Florida and North Carolina right now. I got 2 guys that are murdering it with land.
We've done like one-off land deals. A lot of it's been like infill stuff to where like we know that the lot, like the land is interesting because like if it's an infill lot in a neighborhood, you just got to call the building department and see what you can build on that lot based on zoning and the square footage. So I think land would be definitely a better pivot for a new person compared to like multifamily. And yes, it is. There's a lot of buyers for that. And if you really understand how to get creative with land and what the potential could be, like even in my neighborhood, like Seattle, like you could buy like in my neighborhood, a house for $1 million, knock it down and then build a $2.5-3 million house. Like just because of how expensive it is here. And like, it's on the water. So like in high end markets, you can just crush like Miami, even New York where I'm from, some of these areas in Westchester, like Seattle, San Diego, the development and being able to sell land. I mean, you can make buku money, man. buku money.
I love it. You're at that like 10-year mark almost, of your journey in real estate. And so I typically don't ask these more like thought-provoking on this side question, but I want to with you because I think 10 is such a big milestone of probably will be a really successful multi-decade journey. But knowing that you're like 10 years into the game now, from an investment strategy standpoint, what would you go back and tell yourself 10 years ago? Like, hey, you're about to go on this journey. This is what I need you to do differently.
That's a great question. I would tell my younger self, stop wholesaling as many houses and take down more properties because you're gonna expedite your wealth on the same effort you're already doing. Because it's not easy to find deals. You got to work hard. You got to be willing to spend money, spend time. And I think when people lock deals up and they just give them away on an assignment, and they can make 20, 30 grand, which is good money. If I were to take all my deals that I've wholesaled and see what I would have made flipping them, whether it's just a Cosmo flip or a full gut, or keeping them as rentals, my net worth would have another couple million on top of it just from those extra deals because of the equity and the spread. So I would say use wholesaling as a tool. And honestly, it's funny when we wholesale houses now, like we just wholesale the crap that we don't want to do. Like, and then everything else that's a good deal, we just take it down because we know what the potential is. So I would say wholesale less, use it as a tool, and really understand that sales is the most important, but also understanding and maximizing each piece of property is just as important, because if you can make $60,000 in profit, if you wait 2 months compared to $25,000 in profit and do it in 2 weeks, I'll take that 60 all day long because it's just going to ultimately make you more successful quicker.
Okay. So now we're at that inflection point. Where do you want to be 10 years from now?
That's a good question. I want to be able to have like triple the passive income I have personal expenses. Not there yet. This is passive income, not active income. And then I also probably want to be 1,500 transactions under my belt. I think right now I'm at like almost 300. So, and that's pretty much it. I don't really say I want to have like this huge operation, 90. I think I just want to have, 1,500 transactions under my belt, triple the passive income that I do have expenses. So I could quote unquote retire if I want, like actually retire, not like break even. I would say that's where I want to be financially, at least 10 years.
Yeah, I like that, man. I'm really, I think about the advice you would give yourself 10 years ago. And I wonder because we can't tell, but what the advice you would give yourself 10 years from now back to today, because I'm so in such a newbie to the REI space that really from being active, all I've seen is parabolic rise. And so I say, okay, I imagine 10 years from now will be significantly higher than where we are at today. But sometime in this 10-year journey, it's got to go roller coaster on us at some point. And I know that's a lot of luck and timing and discipline, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm just very interesting to see how the U.S. economy, the global economy, what it really is going to be like, 3, 5, 7 years from now. Like I'm really at a loss.
It's interesting, man. I would say I haven't been through the 2008 thing, but I was, COVID, the interest rate, all that, those little swings. When COVID went down, I was flipping some properties, like fixing and flipping. I was scared shitless. I was like, holy shit, I got private money on these deals. I got to sell them. And I thought the world was going to collapse, like from a real estate standpoint. Turns out it did the complete opposite, right? So then the market went gangbusters, and then that ran up.
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense. They're pumping money to the economy. So I was like, shit, dodged a bullet there. And then the interest rates went up, what was that, mid-2022? And I was living in California, and I was flipping some houses there in San Diego locally. We had the New York business on the other side. And I remember I sold a flip project right when the interest rates went up, and I did really well on it. And then I was like, holy shit, I just dodged a bullet. And then San Diego dropped like 10% off the peak. And I was like, shit, that's crazy. I can't believe I just timed that. So I think with real estate, and like I said, I don't have 20 plus years of experience with like huge swings. If you can always follow the fundamental of buying at a discount based off wherever the market is, it's hard to get really spanked, because if you think the market's going to go down 10% and then you make your offers based on that market being down 10% and your numbers off of that lower number, and you're buying these deals at a true discount where there's an arbitrage between the price you paid for the house and the as is market value, it's harder to get spanked, because the guys that I knew that got creamed when the rates went up were buying these deals at tight numbers from wholesalers, banking on the market going up, and that's where they got, their clock cleaned. So you got to follow those fundamentals.
Yeah. I always say that, the advantage that we have in the wholesaling side, or at least the direct to seller, is we're buying at a discount no matter if it's here or here.
Exactly.
We're always buying at a discount.
To get a good number.
So we have a little bit of a cushion there. I think one of the things that I appreciate the most about you, Greg, is the fact that you do put your content live online. You have these deal breakdown YouTubes that you do as well too. And I think that matters, because there's a lot of people in this space who had a good year. They're like drug dealers when you're in high school and they're like 20 something. They're like, oh, I used to be the man back in the day. It's like, okay, well, that's great. That was 7 years ago, bro. So I see a guy like you and you're actively doing deals and you're putting recent and new content out there. And so I really value that because there's not enough transparency and fidelity, if you will, in the REI space. So how do people find you to learn more, to watch more of your content, to follow, et cetera, et cetera?
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. That's what I try. I just try to share real life practical deals, like not regurgitated theory out of a book. That's like my tagline on YouTube. They can just go to my YouTube channel. It's Greg Helbeck, REI, or they can listen to my podcast. You've been a guest on there. It's called the Real Estate Investing Fast Track. And, we put out 2 shows a week, 2 videos, 2 shows a week. And, it's all, really recent information, active deals, lessons I've learned. We do interviews once in a while. So that's the best way to learn from me directly.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate it, man. I look forward to continue to watch your success, man. I like participating around guys like you as well, too, man. So I thank you for taking the time, previously to have me on that podcast. So guys, go Google that podcast, subscribe to his podcast, check out our episode, leave a like or a comment there. But I really appreciate you coming in and spending some time with me today, man. So that way I could learn a little bit more about your success and then hopefully some other people can learn as well.
Hey, it's my honor. I appreciate you having me as a guest.
You're very welcome, brother. We'll catch up soon. Talk to you, buddy.